Awesome. How's everybody doing today? My name is Ryan Conroy. I am over on Team USA. Today, I am joined by Simon Hamlin, and we have a great session on attracting and nurturing new student leads. We've joined forces with StudyUSA for a stronger, more resilient higher ed community. Unibuddy Discover on StudyUSA.com will help universities optimize their digital channels, reach students, and provide them with information they need throughout the journey. This platform offers a window of over 26 million page views a year, a platform where ambassadors can connect with prospective students and share experiences and create a sense of belonging. And that's not all. With Unibuddy Discover, ambassadors get to be a part of StudyUSA social campaigns, reaching over 600,000 followers. To say that we're absolutely delighted would be an understatement, and this partnership and the potential it has for the community grows, and we're very excited to work with you guys. Now over to you, Simon. I'll let you kind of give a brief overview of yourself.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you for joining us. My name is Simon Hamlin. I'm the Senior Account Executive with Study in the USA, and we've got a great presentation for you today, talking about attracting and nurturing new student leads. I want to first thank Unibuddy for letting us participate in their conference. And we're thrilled to be partnered with Unibuddy now. It's really, especially for this discussion, it's an ideal partnership because Study in the USA is historically great at attracting new student leads, and Unibuddy is great with nurturing student leads. So we're really excited about the partnership and kind of the official launch at the conference. So to start out, what I wanted to do is just ask everyone a question, and I want to encourage you to type in an answer or answers in the chat section. So the question is, how do you currently attract and nurture new student leads? And Ryan is going to go ahead and be looking at these answers. He'll just start reading them off as they come up. And it can be anything from, in pre-COVID, maybe you traveled overseas and met with students. And maybe you have a digital marketing campaign. Maybe you have a social media campaign to connect with students. So whatever those are, and if you're not comfortable in putting it in chat, I would encourage you to just write these down because we're going to be coming back to it. So
Simon,
Ryan and Penny are coming through. I'm going to let you go ahead and read some off.
Yeah, we have Wendy said attending UCAS conventions and fairs. We have Paige who said a lot of our partners use email campaigns. And then we have Stephanie who said national events and digital advertising.
Great. Okay. So good start. Again, keep these in mind as we go along. We'll be revisiting these. And if you have any other questions that come up during the presentation, please go ahead and type them into chat. Ryan will be moderating. He'll stop me if there's anything that's very pertinent that we want to get to right away. Otherwise, we'll go into the questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at attracting and nurturing new student leads through the lens of Study in the USA marketing, our solutions, as well as some specific examples of the student journey. The journey the student goes on from when they first hear about a school to ultimately enrolling in that school. Because that's what we're talking about here. The new student leads and nurturing them are great. Ultimately, what we want to have happen is these turn into new enrollments for you. So first, a little background on Study in the USA. So we are a leader in comprehensive international student recruitment solutions. We've been in the industry for a little over 40 years. And we've created this really wonderful home base, this community for international students to come to and learn about everything they could want to know about studying in the US. We also provide them with a number of resources to help them on their journey. So we're an omni-channel marketing company. We work with English language schools, universities, colleges throughout North America to help them connect with more international students. And when I say omni-channel, what I mean by that is we've got a number of different channels, a number of different methods that you can see. I'm kind of scrolling over here at the bottom of the page. These are some of our key methods. So magazines, and of course, magazine distribution has switched some right now because of COVID, and we'll get more into that. And we'll go into more detail on all of these, but just a quick overview. So magazines, our website, StudyUSA.com, all the information from our website transfers seamlessly to smartphones, so very accessible for students there. We've got social media marketing. We've got content marketing that can include things like articles, student bloggers, and then we've also got email messaging campaigns, so direct emails, newsletters, things like that. So now we're gonna go on our first student journey. I'd like to introduce you to Wei from China. Wei unfortunately doesn't have a face, doesn't have many features, but we love her anyway. Her journey starts right here, and she picks up a Study in the USA magazine at an Education USA office. Now, I will say that's changed a little bit right now. Because of COVID, not all Education USA offices are open. Obviously, education fairs aren't going on right now. So we've actually had to make a quick pivot and adjust our distribution. And we've got magazines that go out around the world. For our Chinese edition, we actually switched distribution so that our Chinese magazine is going to over 750 high schools throughout China. So they're still getting in the hands of Chinese students. So in this case, Wei probably got her magazine from her high school. And when she picks that up, she sees a WeChat code in it and she scans it. And that takes her to the Study in the USA WeChat platform, where she can look at translated profiles of specific schools and get all kinds of other great information on studying in the US. And she can actually click through to StudyUSA.com, our website. Now, a couple days later, she returns to StudyUSA.com and she takes a 3D tour on a couple of schools' profiles and clicks through to those school sites for more information. Now, as you can imagine too, once she has started connecting with specific schools, that is where our Unibuddy partnership comes into play. She is likely going to be connecting with student peers as well to get more information on a specific school and on studying in the US. So that's probably going to happen throughout this journey. So step 4 on her journey, Wei reads a student success story and reaches out to the Study in the USA student support team to get some help, get some more information. And then 2 weeks later, she receives one of our partner magazines called American Campus in the mail. And she reads articles about studying and general life in the US. And then for the next few weeks, she continues her research. She reads more articles. She's on StudyUSA.com, getting more information. She's connecting with other schools. And ultimately, which is often true in China in particular, she then goes to her agent. She takes all this information and this research, and based on that, she ends up, through her agent, applying to a school that she originally found through this whole process, this journey. So what can we learn from this journey? Well, a couple of things. One, you can see that it's not linear. It doesn't just start with A student finds a school, a student applies to the school. There are so many steps in between and so many different, what we'll call touch points, where a student has different marketing methods that are utilized to help them on their journey. So we see how important it is to really meet a student at each point on their journey.
Simon, we had a couple questions come in, if you don't mind answering them.
Please, go for it.
Kim was curious, do you only work with Chinese students or do you work in other markets as well?
That's a great question. We actually work around the world. So this is just one example, and I apologize that wasn't clear. This is just one example of a student journey. This student happens to be from China, but we work with schools, or with students from around the world, and work with schools throughout North America. And I'll actually, in a slide coming up, there's a little more information on the demographics of the students that come to our site and utilize our marketing materials. So I'll be able to answer that in more detail coming up here. A great question.
Awesome, thanks for that. We have one more from John. He
Yeah.
said, have you had any difficulties with Chinese government censorship of material?
So great question. That's one of the things that we do at Study in the USA. We have a locally hosted site in China that helps bypass some of those censorship issues. And then also having magazines, that's kind of a key reason in a market like China to have magazines, because it bypasses some of those censorship issues that you can come across online. So yes, some of those censorship issues are very real. We've been able to bypass those with what I just talked about. And we also actually have a partnership with a social media company in China. So in our social media efforts, we're able to bypass those issues as well.
Awesome, I appreciate you answering those questions, Simon.
Yeah, you bet, thank you. So this actually, and hopefully will further answer some of these questions. I'm gonna go into a little more detail on Study in the USA and our reach. So these three areas, print, our magazines, our website, StudyUSA.com, and our social media platform, these are what I consider to be really our three key foundational pillars for what I consider to be a strong, comprehensive marketing campaign. So in the case of print, we've got 1.4 million magazines that are distributed worldwide. Because again, we work with students from around the world, over 100 countries. We've got 10 different magazines translated into 5 different languages. And like I said earlier, our distribution channels have had to be adjusted. We've put more of an emphasis this year on our e-magazines, our digital magazines. So we're still making sure to get these in the hands of these students from around the world. Then we've got our website, StudyUSA.com, which has 7.6 million unique visitors each year. And the thing to keep in mind, and these are, again, students from around the world that are coming to our site. And because we've created such a vibrant community with so much great information, so many resources, and because we're not just a site that lists schools, but we have all this other great information, these 7.6 million unique visitors, they're also coming back to our site with frequency. So even in that last example that you saw with Wei and her student journey, she was revisiting StudyUSA.com on several occasions to continue her research and to get more information. And then we've got our social media platform. We're on all the usual suspects. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, WeChat, LinkedIn. And combined, we have over 600,000 likes and followers on all of our social media platforms. And the great part about all these three key pillars is that they really, there's a great synergy between them. They work hand in hand. And again, we saw that in the example of Way's journey. So she first heard about StudyUSA.com through a magazine. And then after visiting, well, actually, she went to social media, so WeChat, then went to StudyUSA.com. She got another magazine. So all of these marketing channels are really working together and helping to guide the student through that journey to ultimately enrolling in your school. And hopefully this gets to an earlier question on who we reach, who Study in the USA reaches. So we target, and our audience is young, ambitious, and excited students who want to experience everything in the US and that the US has to offer. And you can see the breakdown in terms of ages, and the key one here, that sweet spot age 18 to 24, half of our audience is from there. We've got, again, we reach over 100 countries. So students from over 100 countries are interacting with all of those key pillars of a great marketing campaign that we just looked at. These are our top countries, and you'll see a lot of familiar names on there. These are typical top sending countries for students, international students coming to the US. And then I think this is really interesting. It's a pretty even mix of students who are coming to study in the USA and looking for bachelor's degrees, looking for master's degrees, looking for ESL programs.
Simon, we just got another question from Paige. How do you think the student journey has changed over the past few years, and how is it the same?
Good question. So in terms of the student journey, how it's changed over the last couple of years, I think there's just way more tools and way more, I don't want to call it noise, but there's just way more coming at a student. And I think really for all of us, we're just inundated with a lot more information. So it's you know, it's trickier and trickier to get in front of the students in a meaningful way and to get your information across to them. And that's really, you know, that's why all of these different marketing methods and having peer-to-peer relationships like through Unibuddy becomes so critical, because it creates that more of a one-on-one, undistracted kind of opportunity. And then in terms of how things have stayed the same, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit more coming up, but print, magazines, I would say, are still a really important part of a well-rounded marketing campaign. And you know, that was really what Study in the USA was founded on. And that's what a lot of us are used to. But it's easy to lose sight of that with all the digital opportunities now. You know, that print is still a really big part of a good marketing campaign, and a way to keep that focus and not have a lot of distractions when you're getting information.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer, Simon.
Thank you for the question, Paige. So now we're coming to our next student journey. This is Joao from Brazil. And so a little side note, I was talking with my colleague yesterday. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a sitcom called Schitt's Creek. So we decided that Joao is a spitting image, even though we don't see his mouth or nose or eyes. He is a spitting image of the sun in one of the main characters in Schitt's Creek. So I encourage you all to go look that up after the presentation. You'll see what I mean. So we love João from Brazil. This is a very different student journey. So João actually, his journey starts with, and this is a very common way that students first find study in the USA, is he goes online, he does a general search to find information on how to get a visa. And what is often the case is one of our articles pops up in those searches. So he goes to StudyUSA.com, reads the article, and then while he's on StudyUSA.com, in this second part, a Google ad pops up with a school that João has never heard of, but it piques his interest. So later that week, João, he goes to a Facebook post, a fun social post on Facebook, and it reminds him about the school that had popped up previously, but he still doesn't take any action. Then 2 weeks later, João attends a virtual fair with some friends, and he goes to the Study in the USA booth, and he talks to an advisor, and that advisor offers up 3 different schools that kind of match his criteria, one of which is that school that popped up on the Google ad. And as you can imagine at this point too, this is probably when João would consider engaging with a student ambassador, a peer who's currently attending this school that he's interested in. So that comes into play in this process. And then within a few days, João receives an email from each of these schools that he's interested in. And he finds that he's still very interested in that school that had initially popped up. And then a few nights later, he watches a student story about the college he's now really interested in on Study in the USA's Instagram page. And he goes ahead and he sends that out to his friends. So that's starting to get the word out on a specific school as well. And ultimately, João, he contacts the admissions department at this school that he's interested in, the one that he found in that initial visa search, and he ends up applying and enrolling at that school. So you can see these are pretty different journeys than what we saw with Wei. But there are some similarities as well. They both utilize StudyUSA.com a lot. They both utilized social media and the social media channels that Study in the USA offers, although they use different ones, because in China it's strictly WeChat, and João, he used Instagram. And you know, the other big similarity, again, we see that this journey isn't linear, and that it is critical to meet these students at each point of their journey, because and also really making sure that you have a number of different tools at your disposal to reach these students, because each student is different. Like the tools that you would have used to reach Wei are different from those tools that you're using to reach João. So we'll let João get back to his sitcom career. And we've talked a lot about StudyUSA.com. Both of our student journey examples visited there. So I want to take a minute to talk about the featured profiles on StudyUSA.com. This is it's a consistent and really important, what I would call a foundational point to have for a marketing campaign. You have this consistent presence by having a StudyUSA.com profile. So we've got over 200 schools on our site with StudyUSA.com profiles. These are dedicated profiles with information about the school. It gives a good overview of the school, what makes it unique. It's got a slideshow with pictures of the campus and students. It's got a fast fact section with all kinds of great information. We can include videos. It's got dedicated customized text that goes into the specifics of the school. And because our website, StudyUSA.com, translates into 13 different languages, it makes it really accessible. And our schools have the option to have their profiles translated into any of those languages that we offer. And then one of the key parts of this profile is this inquiry form. So this inquiry form is where students can go and fill out their contact information, their areas of interest, and then our schools receive that student lead. So they've generated a new student lead, and they can start nurturing those leads. And with our Unibuddy partnership, on this profile, we will be embedding student ambassadors from the school so that in addition to filling out this inquiry form, a potential student can reach out to these student ambassadors.
Simon, we actually just got another great question from Paige. She said, what do you think is the most critical part of the student's journey to choosing a university?
I actually think that there is no single most critical part. I think the critical part is having a number of different ways to connect with and to get information to students. And it's really, it's kind of like in everyday life when you think about like what compels you to take action on something or to buy a product or to use a service. It's rarely like one silver bullet that like has all the answers and that gets you to take the action. It's this constant, getting information from one source, talking to a student ambassador and hearing their story, all of a sudden seeing your school on social media, all of a sudden reading about it in an article. All of these different things just start adding up, and eventually there's kind of this tipping point where you take action. So yeah, I think it's just, there's a number of things that go into any decision.
Awesome. I think that's a very valid point. Thanks for the question, Paige.
Yeah, thank you, Paige. So talking a little bit more about the Unibuddy partnership, we've talked about how those student ambassadors are embedded onto StudyUSA.com profiles. A really amazing stat that Unibuddy provided us is that 80% of students utilize peer-to-peer communication to make their school decisions. So again, 80% utilize peer-to-peer communication to make their school decisions. So we recognize the importance of peer-to-peer communication, and it's something that Study in the USA has wanted to implement for several years now. COVID and the times that we're in have only accelerated that need. And we had met Unibuddy at a previous NAFSA, and we realized that Unibuddy already had the platform and the technology to really facilitate these student ambassadors. So we reconnected with Unibuddy and were able to form this partnership. And it's a really, it's very timely. And as an extension of that partnership, we also have a dedicated spot on StudyUSA.com where all of student ambassadors will live. So when you go to StudyUSA.com, there's a navigation bar at the top. There is a tab that says chat. And when that is clicked on, it takes you to this page. And you get to see all of the different student ambassadors from all the different participating schools. And a student can search by all kinds of different criteria to select a student ambassador that they want to talk with. Now, we've talked about our profile, StudyUSA.com profile, and the student ambassadors. It's also important to have a way to measure our results. So our SMART dashboard is a tool to measure the results that you get from your StudyUSA.com campaign. This is a spot where all of our schools can go to anytime and get real-time stats on how many student leads they've gotten, what countries those student leads are coming from, what's the age range, what majors are they looking for, what are their areas of study that they're interested in. And then also with this smart dashboard, our schools can update the information on their profile anytime they like. So this brings us to our third student journey. This is Peter from the Netherlands. We don't have any sitcom characters that we could figure out that he looks like. He actually is pretty indescript, no face, no arms, but we love him nevertheless. And so his journey is actually is a different one than we've seen so far. He's actually 2 years away from graduating, and he's already starting his research and looking into schools and programs. So he visits StudyUSA.com, and then he checks out StudyUSA.com, Study in the USA's Facebook page, and he signs up to receive regular emails. So over the course of these next 2 years, Peter has opted in to receive regular newsletters and regular emails, and with all kinds of information from different schools on different aspects of studying in the US. And this is starting to help him maybe identify some schools that he wants to consider. He actually makes some inquiries to some of these schools. He's probably starting to talk to some of the student ambassadors at these schools. And as we go along, at a certain point, he reads a student blogger story in one of our newsletters, and he clicks through to StudyUSA.com. And then in the post, he discovers that there is such a thing as a gap year program. So in the end, he goes and talks to his university counselor. She recommends a program he found on StudyUSA.com that she knows has an exchange program. And Peter then ends up doing a gap year. So the big thing in this one is you see how far out students are starting this process. And so it becomes really important to have a lot of different ways to engage with students throughout this process. And it becomes even more important for the schools when they get these student leads and these inquiries to make sure that they are following up on a regular basis, sending emails to these students on a regular basis to keep them informed, keep them engaged, so that when it does come time to make their decision, they are considering your school as an option. And so we've seen a lot of similarities. Again, we're going back to this nonlinear route, and also this need to meet the student on every point of this journey with a number of different tools.
Simon, we got a quick question from Faith. She said, are the student ambassadors with StudyUSA student volunteers?
They often are. Sometimes I have heard there might be a student worker, so a student that that works in an international office at a school or an admissions office, and they might be encouraged to become a student ambassador. But it really is on a volunteer basis. These are students that want to share their experiences and are excited to talk to other potential students.
Awesome, thanks for that answer.
Yeah, you bet. So we've seen through these couple of journeys that social media is playing a role in really all of them. And a point that I want to emphasize is that you could see that there is no single social media platform that all students are using. I mean, in the case of China, WeChat is the one that's available. In the case of Joao, we saw Instagram come up and Facebook. So it's really important that you have you have the ability to get presence on all kinds of different social media platforms. And because Study in the USA has a great presence on all these different platforms, and these are some stats to kind of bear that out, we're a good source for really helping our schools connect to students on social media. And then another big thing that we saw in these student journeys is that follow-up correspondence via email and newsletters. So Study in the USA, we have a database of 50,000 plus students, international students, who have opted in to receive frequent correspondence from us. And that takes the form of direct emails that we send on behalf of our specific schools, as well as regular newsletters with a wealth of information on all aspects of studying in the US. So you can see we've got a phenomenal open rate, 58%, and a click-through rate of 30%. It's well above industry standard, and just shows how effective these direct emails and newsletters are in helping that student journey. And then we've also got sponsored content. So articles, that article that Joao came across in his search for student visas. A lot of our articles are written by our schools and contributed to by our schools. Other examples of sponsored content, blogs and vlogs, video blogs that are done by our students. So our schools can submit student bloggers and vloggers, and they become a really powerful way to keep students, potential students, engaged in the process. And then an extension of the that sponsored content is student sessions. This is something that we just implemented these last couple of months in response to these COVID times. So we started conducting these Facebook Live and Instagram Live sessions where our schools who can't travel overseas now like they normally would have, but still want to connect with students in a more meaningful way in a live setting. The Facebook and Instagram Live sessions are a really powerful tool for that. We've got a lot of great stats that shows the reach those get. And we've actually already seen some enrollments come about because of these student sessions as a direct result of this student interaction that our schools are getting with through these sessions. And then we've got print. We come back to print, which is really what started it for Study in the USA 40 years ago. So I had mentioned earlier, we have a distribution of 1.4 million magazines. That certainly changed this time around because of COVID. In the example of Way, we had to change our distribution and send magazines more directly to high schools. We've also put more of an emphasis on the digital magazines. So that's something we're going to be promoting more heavily this year. But I will say magazines are still a very important part, as I said earlier, of a well-rounded marketing campaign. There's a lot of studies, a lot of data, articles that show that students, one, it holds their attention better, the magazines. It's also a source that they truly appreciate and enjoy. And also, when you think about this student journey, one thing that we haven't seen, but that is very much a part of it, is parents. So parents, not surprisingly, play a big role in this. And not surprisingly, parents prefer, on the whole, magazines. That's just something that they're more used to. So print is a great way to get in front of parents as well in this process. And as we see here, we've got 10 different publications in 5 different languages distributed worldwide.
Simon, we got a quick question from Ed. He said, do you have any insight into specific comm channels being more effective for certain demographics, or do the different channels perform similarly regardless of the audience?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there definitely is a difference in different markets. So going back to that China example, and actually one of the other questions that came up about any censorship issues, that's a perfect example of a market that I think print is more important, because there are just some censorship issues and possibilities, and sometimes it's harder to get information online. So that would be a good example of a spot where print, I would put more of an emphasis on print in the Chinese market than I would maybe in another market.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, thank you. So ultimately, all this comes back to, what is your solution? So we've talked a lot about different marketing options, marketing tools. We've looked at several different student journeys. Ultimately, though, how do you and your school attract these students, nurture these leads, and get these students to enroll at your school? So I want to return to that original question that I asked. What do you right now do for your marketing to connect with, to generate new student leads, and what do you do to nurture them? Think back to what your answers were on that, and now compare that to some of the student journeys that we saw, to some of the tools that we've discussed. And do you see any gaps in your marketing efforts? Are there points on any of these student journeys where, based on what you have in place right now, you might have lost that student? You might not have been able to meet that student at that step in their journey, and now they're gone. So, we've talked about sponsored content. We've talked about social media, about print, about digital, StudyUSA.com, about newsletters, direct emails, and we've seen how all of that, how important that is on each of these student journeys and how different the journeys are. So now is the time to really, again, ask yourself, where are my gaps? What am I doing well? And how can I just improve those marketing efforts? And I will say too, I recognize how challenging these times are. It's become a cliche, but it's true. We talk to a lot of schools that are seeing a dip in enrollment. They're seeing their budgets cut. But I will say that now is not the time to back off of your marketing efforts. Now is the time to really dig in and, if anything, increase those efforts. Because as we've seen, there are students who are already starting their search process and they're several years away. And if we're not keeping that constant marketing presence going today, then you've missed out on that student that is making that decision 2 years from now. Because I can promise you there are other schools that are keeping their foot on the pedal of marketing. We work with a few hundred of them, and they still put an emphasis on marketing. So we don't want to fall any further behind than we might already be. And again, recognizing that these are challenging times, we've implemented at Study in the USA a lot of packages, a lot of solutions at different budget levels to really accommodate all different types of schools with all different types of needs. So with that, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join me here today and learning more about attracting and nurturing new student leads and ultimately pushing them toward enrollments. My email address is simon@studyusa.com. I welcome you to reach out if you have more questions about marketing in general. If you want to talk about your specific marketing needs and challenges, learn more about Study in the USA, anything, I would love to hear from you. And I know, Ryan, we've got, I don't know how much time we have left, but if we want to take a few minutes for questions, do we have a couple minutes, Ryan, or do we even have some questions that we want to take?
We have a couple minutes. I will let you know if I see any questions pulled through here, and we can answer them. If anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in the live chat, or you can take it off and you can direct message me as well, and we can answer them.
Perfect. And yeah, again, if, feel free to reach out to me directly with additional questions. And thank you all for the great questions throughout the presentation. And hopefully this was helpful.
Simon, I just wanted to take a second to thank you for doing this session with us and giving us all that amazing information.
Absolutely. And thank you to Unibody. Thanks for putting together this conference. I mean, I know how stressed out I get just with trying to conduct one Zoom call. So the fact that you guys have put together this whole conference that involves all these logistics with Zoom and all these participants, hats off to you guys. And thank you for letting us participate. And again, we're thrilled to be partnered with you. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Simon. We have a great team over here at Unibody. It makes everything go round.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. We got a question right here. Kim asked, have the universities you work with right now experienced a lot of international student defer for the next year?
Deferral till next year? It's a mix. And I'm speaking kind of from like anecdotal evidence, like, we're constantly talking with schools, and we have seen, like I said earlier, some dips in enrollment, and I'm guessing those are students that are deferring. So yes, we are seeing some of that, and that is common with a lot of our schools. So, not surprisingly, but also we're seeing students still very much engaged in the school search process and coming to our site and utilizing our magazine and engaged in social media. So, and I actually attended an English USA conference a couple of weeks ago, a virtual conference, and it was reiterated there. There is still a demand and still a desire to come and study in the US. So even though we are seeing some deferrals and some changes in enrollment, the demand has not changed. There is still a great demand and desire to come and study in the US for international students.
Gotcha. Appreciate the answer. One last question. I think we have enough time.
Yeah.
Ed asked, what would be your one key takeaway for those looking to nurture students better?
Yeah, I would say having all the tools at your disposal, having a true toolkit, because there is all these different points of the journey, and this need to really connect with students in different ways at different points of the journey. So I would say really checking what we're calling your toolkit of marketing capabilities and options, and making sure you've got a comprehensive toolkit at your disposal.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Simon.
Yeah.
It seems like that's all for our questions today. I do appreciate you taking the time out and giving us that presentation. It was very helpful and some great information.
You bet. Thanks again. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
No problem. Thanks, Simon. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.